Hi, I'm Ed,
I'm Steve.
and we're the 6'5 guys. And today we bring you another installment of Industry Insights, where we explore the people, the personalities, the passions that make up the shooting industry. And today we have with us Ted Karagias of American Rifle Company.
Welcome, Ted.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Ted, tell us a bit about American Rifle Company.
American Rifle Company is an engineering company focused on designing, manufacturing, and marketing rifles. And we serve the shooting community, particularly those who compete with bolt-action rifles at various events throughout the country.
So, I mean, people that want a rock-solid, bomb-proof action is what it sounds like.
The Mausenfield, what you see before you here, was designed to be tolerant of the conditions you might encounter in the field during a competition or even in combat.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk a little bit more about that if you'd like.
Okay. Well, tell us first a little bit about how American Rifle Company got started. What's the history?
So basically, my background, I'm a mechanical engineer. I've worked, I've designed surgical devices for orthopedic trauma, and then most recently, for the last 15 years, I was designing machine tools and assembly equipment for the aerospace industry. And about 18 months ago, I suppose, it was just time to leave and give American Rifle a full-time go. And what got me started designing rifles, this was back in 2000. Well, I started designing rifles in 2003, but what really planted the seed was a guy named Fred Wells from Wells Sports Store at Prescott, Arizona. Gotta give him a shout out. But Fred is no longer with us, unfortunately. But back when I was 19 years old, I had an opportunity to meet the man at a shop. And he actually sent me, I left there and shortly thereafter changed directions, changed my focus to mechanical engineering and manufacturing as well. I like machines and manufacturing in general. But so he was sort of the inspiration that kind of, pointed me in this direction. And then years went by. I always thought about designing a bolt action. They always had a special place in my heart. So back in 2003, a friend of mine, he said, "Hey, you've been talking about it long enough. Why don't you do it?"
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, it would be, hey, how hard could it be?
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, it was a long time. There was a lot harder than I thought it would be. I knew there was work to be done. Had I thought I could just go out there and buy a good bolt action, I wouldn't have done it. What would be the point? But so the point, at least now, this is the third one that I've designed, but all three, I wanted to make a difference with all three, and with this one, I think we've got something pretty special.
Can you walk us through? We just have the rifle here in your Mausenfield action, but can you walk us through the highlights of your product line that you have right now?
So we started with the first thing we actually brought to market were the M3 scope rings. Now they're the M10 scope rings. They've gone through, I think, something like 5 evolutions, and we're pretty happy with those. I guess we can see those in another video, maybe, but
Yeah, definitely.
we don't have any right here right now. We also do a QDL mount for more like for something like an FN SCAR, or for like an arm, like an AR with a full-length rail, with like the monolithic uppers. They're ideally suited for those, but they work on others as well. And now most recently we're delivering these the Mausenfield actions, so that guys can build custom rifles like this one on them, and these will, that's basically where we're at right now. We also have the M2 in the works. That project is actually a lot bigger in scope, and taking me a bit more time than I thought it would, but nevertheless, it's that's got a special place in my brain, I think. So.
I mean, on the surface, beautiful looking action. But tell us about some of the unique features of the M5. I mean, there are a lot of actions out there, but what makes this special?
Okay, so the Mausenfield is basically a Remington 700 footprint compatible with chassis systems, magazines, trigger guards, and triggers that are Remington compatible. But the similarities with Remington basically end there. Internally, the action is pretty unique. It uses a Mauser style extractor and a Springfield ejector, two of the most battle-proven systems ever devised for bolt actions. I couldn't improve upon them, not for lack of trying, but it's just something that, you know, I looked at it, I thought about it, and understood them, and I figured they were a good way to go, so I adopted them. Additionally, the rail, the scope mounting rail, or I should say the interface with the scope mounting rail, is unique in that it is removable. It is not an integral rail, and the reason for that is people change their minds as to what scope they plan on using. For instance, if you're using a 34 millimeter scope where 30 MOA of rail inclination is appropriate, and then you decide to switch to a 30 millimeter scope, you might have, now you need a 20 MOA rail. If the rail is integral, you can't make that switch. Another interesting feature of the Mausenfield is its rail interface, its scope mounting rail interface. And what's unique about it is that the receiver has a tapered key machined into the top of it. The rail, which we also manufacture, has a similarly tapered slot machined into the bottom of it, so that when you bolt the rail to the receiver with 5 standard 836 by 1/4 inch long socket head cap screws, you essentially establish, or an interference fit is established between the two. So the rail, for the purposes of scope mounting, is every bit as secure as an integrally machined rail, yet more flexible in that it can be swapped out for a rail with a different inclination angle, you know, in the event that the shooter wants to go from a 34 millimeter scope to a 30 millimeter scope, or, you know, to some, you know, basically optimize his the inclination for his scope. Another thing is it does have an integrally machined recoil lug. I did that simply to increase the thread engagement between the barrel and the receiver. It's not there for strength. I'm not going to tell people that you know, that lugs that are not integrally machined have strength issues. They don't. I just, like, you know, it is what it is. And okay, so with the Mausenfield, we run about 10 thou of clearance on the diameter between the rail and the receiver, and the reason for that is we want the action to be tolerant of dirt and debris that might get into it during use at a match or in combat or wherever people choose to use these things. But when you move the bolt forward and close it, there's a portion, the aft portion of the bolt is a little bit bigger in diameter than the forward portion, and that larger diameter will more tightly engage the bore that's in the receiver. Another thing is the bolt in the Mausenfield. Well, this is a Mauser Extractor, true to the original Mauser form. It has a little tongue that protrudes into a slot that's cut, or a groove that's cut into the bolt immediately behind the bolt face. That has the groove actually has a 20-degree taper on one of the walls. The tongue has a similar taper, and that basically, when during extraction, the extractor is actually pulled forward by about 20 thou until it stops, till the tongue bottoms out in the groove, and that little angle prevents the extractor from basically slipping off of the case rim. Okay. It's for added security. a lot of the people that claim they do Mauser extractors actually omit that feature. They don't put it in there. These two little lugs that protrude. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mauser bolts. You'll probably recognize those from the original Mauser bolt face as well. Those are used to help, help the extractor hold the cartridge after the extractor's been pulled forward slightly. And then on this side, on the side of the bolt opposite the extractor, we have this slot cut through the lug, just like the Mauser, penetrates the face, and the Springfield ejector, the blade of the Springfield type ejector, enters the slot and is cammed into engagement with the cartridge case when this lug hits it. So, and then on the back end, we have a rotatable and removable bolt knob. Now we make these, and we have a few variants of these. I personally prefer the ones that don't rotate. Some guys might like the ones that do. Nice thing is, these things are easy to swap out, so you can kind of do whatever makes you happy there. There's a tapped hole in the back of the bolt that aids in disassembly. So when you want to take the bolt apart, you can screw a little screw in there. You put a big washer over this first, and you put a little screw in there, and you can lift the bolt out. We can do that here, or you can lift the firing pin and then unscrew the bolt shroud. And to make unscrewing the bolt shroud easy, we should draw your attention to this little spring-loaded plunger there. And the Mauser, this is also a feature from Mauser. And what this does, this prevents the accidental rotation of the bolt shroud when the bolt is retracted, because if and it does so by just engaging that slot, that little cutout in the bolt there. So when the bolt is retracted, there's no way to accidentally rotate the cocking piece, because if it rotates, the firing pin will fall into the firing pin cam, which is going to make it so you can't close your bolt. It has toroidal bolt lugs, or the bearing surfaces of the bolt lugs are shaped as portions of an O-ring, and they bear against a corresponding surface within the receiver that's shaped, that's spherical in shape. And what this does, the reason this is nice is because the Mausenfield's bolt never has to be lapped. You don't have to lap the lugs against the receiver to get proper contact when the bolt is closed. And the reason for that is that the toroidal shaped lugs can only seat, or can only bear against the spherical bearing surface within the receiver in one way. So there's basically, they have to find their lowest energies. No other condition exists, regardless of what the back of the bolt is doing within an action. So basically, to put it another way, the contact between the bolt lugs and the receiver is insensitive to the alignment of the bolt within the receiver.
Very nice.
So Ted, let's take a more detailed look inside the bolt.
Okay, so to do that, I have another action here that we can use. This one has no trigger, as you can see. So to remove the bolt, you simply just lift the bolt handle. The bolt release is on a right-handed action anyway. The bolt release is on the left. So you just push this button, bolt comes right out. And the tools you need to disassemble the bolt, I just used some Allen wrenches. A little screw, a washer, and a little bit of Loctite. And I'll show you what all that's for here as we do it. So basically, the first thing you want to do is you want to use the screw and the washer to just pick up the firing pin a little bit and to keep it from falling forward. And the other thing I like to do is I like to take this set screw out. This set screw basically is just a keeper for the spring that pushes out the plunger. That is the the bolt shroud locking pin. It's just easier to unscrew the bolt shroud from the bolt if you just take that little set screw out right there and that little spring out, and then you can just push that. You can push that plunger in, and then it'll fall right out. So then, once you do that, you can put this screw in, put that washer on, and then just tighten it a little bit. You don't have to tighten it much, because just as soon as you turn it, right, and it starts spinning the bolt shroud, it basically has the firing pin now. So then you just unscrew the firing pin, and it comes right out. So now, once you get to here, you can remove this screw or loosen it. I usually just loosen it. You can take it all the way out as well if you want. So I just loosen that. And the firing pin has a lightweight aluminum nut with a washer behind it that's used to capture the spring. And if you look closely, you can see a little cross pin. And the little cross pin keeps the nut from backing off the thread. So to take it apart, this makes it really, really easy to take this thing apart without, risk of losing your eyeball, by, shooting yourself in the eye with a spring or something like that. So all you have to do is just turn this aluminum nut until you can see it right there, it just fell out, until that little pin falls out, right? And then you can just back this out and and safely unload the spring. And then with that, the nut and the washer come out, and then a little bit of anti-seize on this thing, or grease, I guess. The spring comes off, firing pin comes out the back, and that's the complete disassembly of the bolt. You can also take the bolt knob off by just unscrewing that, and then the bolt knob will just come right off. You can put a different one on. So to keep going with the disassembly of the bolt, one thing we've done here, this actually fell out before I picked it up, but this is the bolt head is actually pinned to the bolt body. Now this is not a floating bolt head, right? It's actually a pretty tight tolerance fit between the bolt head and the bolt. We don't need a floating bolt head, again, because we have toroidal lugs that maintain contact with the receiver regardless of the alignment of the bolt, regardless of the alignment between the bolt and receiver. So to take this portion apart, you simply just push that pin out if it didn't fall out when you pulled the firing pin out. The firing pin is what captures it, right? Then you can just pull the bolt head off, and then once you get to here, you can pull the extractor collar off. Now you'll notice, if you're familiar with the Mauser had an extractor collar that basically had to be, was a lot more difficult to disassemble and reassemble it, and you'd have to bend them around the bolt and somehow get them to engage the extractor. But this one, you just once you remove the bolt head from the bolt body, this one just pulls right off of the bolt and right out of the extractor. So it's really, really easy. And then you can pull the extractor apart. So that's all the pieces of the bolt, right? And putting it back together is just as easy. You basically do everything in reverse. You start with the bolt head and the extractor. You grab your extractor collar. It matters how you put this on, whether you put it on like this or like this. The lug gets thinner as it goes forward, so you want the thin side forward. And then you slip that over there. It engages the extractor, right? And then you put your bolt head, your bolt body, or your bolt head in the bolt body. You get your bolt head pin. Now the bolt head pin has a little groove that's cut into the top of it. You align the groove with the long axis of the bolt. So you put that in there. So you got to line everything up to do that. Hold on a second here. There it goes. So you line up the groove, or approximately. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? And then once you're there, you just put that guy down. Okay. Also worth noting is the firing pin is actually two pieces. It's the pin is the pin is a single piece from basically tip to tail. The cocking piece is a separate piece. This piece here, which is some people call it the striker, other people call it the cocking piece. It's all the same thing basically. But basically, the pin is inserted into it and basically pressed. They're pressed fit together. So you can get them apart, but you need tools to do it. But just treat it as one part. There's really no reason for you ever to have to take the firing pin apart. So to put the firing pin assembly back together, right? You grab your bolt shroud, put your firing pin through it. Just make sure the firing pin is all the way forward. It makes putting the spring on a little bit easier, right? Well, it makes putting the nut on a little bit easier. So you hold that all the way forward. You're going to have to give the spring a little squeeze and then rotate this thing to engage the thread and screw it down until you expose the hole for the little pin. Right, so there you can see the hole's been exposed. We screwed the nut down far enough to expose the hole, and you just put your little pin in. Right, you put the pin in, and as you screw the nut out, there's a counterbore in the nut that will capture the pin. So I'll just do that. Oops, I dropped the pin. So I'll just do that. Yeah, so it's pretty easy to put together and take apart. It's easy to deal with, with a heavy spring. So once that's together, we know our bolt. We put the body of the bolt together before. Screw the two together, and then you can feel the firing pin go up the ramp. And then once it bottoms out, you just basically back it off a little bit until the hole lines up with the cut in the bolt, and then you take your bolt shroud locking pin, drop that in, take your locking pin spring, put that in, make sure the pin goes forward, and then I just like to hold the little set screw with an Allen wrench, put that together. Now I usually put a little bit of Loctite on this guy just to hold him in place. You can they can bottom out on the threads as well. But I just like a little bit of Loctite. Makes me feel good. And that's it. There's your bolt. And you can put the bolt right back in the receiver. Well, sometimes you have to push the ejector, push it into the receiver, and it just goes together. And there you have it. That's your Mausenfield. That's basically your Mausenfield assembly and disassembly and reassembly.
So Ted, give us an idea on product availability, how you would actually order, if there's options available, pricing, that sort of thing.
So the Mausenfield is priced at $1,600. You can go to AmericanRifleCompany.com and place your order for one, at which point you must specify the inclination of the rail, because you can basically order it with any rail angle you want. So it's good to know what scope you want to use, but you can go ahead and place your order, and even if you change your mind about the scope, we can always replace the rail for you down the road. It's a simple exchange. We are delivering them now. Availability is 4 to 6 weeks, and again, the price is $1,600, and you get them at AmericanRifle.com.
And the left-hand versions?
The left-hand versions will come soon. Right now, we have short-action rights. We will do short-action lefts. Actually, there's going to be 8 permutations ultimately. All of them are forthcoming very soon. Basically, right and left-handed versions of short action and long action tactical, and short action and long action hunting versions as well. The hunting versions will have the top of the receiver will be cut away so they can be top loaded and a little bit lighter weight, I suppose.
And if you needed a left action, I guess you could always get the M2 rifle, right?
Absolutely. That's what I'm going to tell my wife.
Yeah, the M2 is a special little animal. I think that is the industry's first ambidextrous bolt action, brought to you by yours truly.
Yeah, that is very, very innovative. I saw some videos out there and was quite impressed.
Thank you.
Well, folks, we hope you've enjoyed this installment of 6'5 Guys. It's really been a pleasure to learn more about American Rifle Company, have Ted here with us to show us more about the Mausenfield action. If you've liked this video, please share, like, and subscribe on YouTube.
Folks, remember, life's an adventure.
Stay on target.
That's a hit.
Well, naturally,
6'5
good.
Guys.
you're a 6'5 guy. And he's shooting a 6.5
There you
caliber.
go.
There we go.
He's shooting a 6.5 cartridge, so naturally he's going to master it.